My friends and I had just left a party at a local bar, and we were walking back to my house, seeing how it wasn't too far away from where we were. On our way back, we happened to come across a small lot sandwiched between two apartment buildings that was filled with black garbage bags and piles of tires. Rich proposed going in, and after a few minutes of consideration, Dennis and I agreed. Obviously, there was nothing special or fun about a rotten-smelling junkyard, but we were a bit drunk, so it seemed like a great idea at the time. We decided to play a game called King of the Hill on the fort of tires that stood before us. Basically, we were just pushing each other off the top. After a while of climbing up and falling down a pile of tires in an idiotic attempt of having fun, we took a break by sitting against one of the dumpsters that stood near the entrance. As I tried to get a hold of my breath, I gazed around the small dump and noticed something I failed to spot out before. There was a white grocery bag hanging from the fence in the back corner of the junkyard. I figured that someone tried to throw it over, but it got caught on the fence on its way down. The bag seemed to be filled with something. It had blocky edges poking out from all sides. I know something as plain as a grocery bag isn't much, but it still intrigued me.
Hey,
I said as I nudged Rich, who happened to be sitting next to me.
Look over there.
Dennis leaned out behind Rich and looked towards where I was pointing.
So it's just a few rips. No one's going to care about whether or not the bags are torn.
He was pointing out the tears our shoes had left in the trash bags when we were playing our little game.
No, the grocery bag hanging from the fence,
I said.
So?
Well, it's filled with something.
And?
Said Dennis. I shrugged.
But don't you guys want to know what's inside?
No. It's just trash, man.
Well, what if it's something like jewelry? I said as I stood and made my way towards the grocery bag.
You're just gonna find that cat in there, dude.
Dennis hollered as I struggled to climb the mound of garbage bags that blocked my path. His sentence was followed by the two of them laughing. I didn't really care what they had to say. I was just a bit curious. That's all. Once I made it to the other side, I reached for the grocery bag and grabbed it. Inside of it was a whole bunch of cassette tapes and an old Walkman.
No way. You guys gotta see this.
I called out to my friends.
Did you find the leprechaun's gold?
Rich mocked.
Hold on. I'm coming.
Hastily, I climbed the pile of trash bags and walked back to where they were sitting.
Look at this.
I held the bag open, letting Rich and Dennis view its contents. I pulled out a tape and read its label.
Journal entry 1.
I pulled out another.
Entry 3.
There's no way it's someone's diary,
Said Dennis.
Huh. Wonder why they'd throw it away.
Probably because they realized how stupid they were for keeping a diary.
Said Rich.
Whatever.
I dropped the bag on the ground.
It's late, and we should be heading home.
Whoa,
Said Dennis as he snatched the bag from the pavement.
What the hell are you doing, man? Don't you guys want to listen to these?
Well, it could be a bit funny.
Journal entry 1.
Started Dennis in a stereotypical British voice.
I walked my dog, Bon Bon, to the park and came across a squirrel.
I laughed.
Dennis, you're an ass. Fine. Let's just take him with us.
We left the junkyard and continued to walk down the street towards my house. I remember how excited I was to listen to those tapes. Stupid, I know, but the thought of listening to someone's personal life sounded interesting to me. Once we arrived at the house, I unlocked the door and immediately walked towards the dining room. Dennis set the bag down in the center of the table and pulled out the Walkman. As the three of us grabbed ourselves a seat, eager to hear what it had to say, I seized the first tape, put it in, and pressed play. I was surprised at what I heard. The voice wasn't at all what I expected. It seemed to be a boy who sounded as if he was in his late teens.
Hey, my name is Chris, and I'm a junior in high school. I don't really have many friends. Actually, I have none. I guess it's just because people don't like me, or maybe because I'm too weird. I'm not too weird, am I? Anyways, that's not why I'm here. It's actually because my uncle gave me this Walkman and a few tapes. He said the Walkman used to be his, and that he just didn't have the heart to throw it away, because he used it so much as a kid, so he made it my birthday present. Well, I didn't have the heart to let it catch dust in the corner, so here I am, using it. Maybe it will come in handy one day. I don't really know. Should I go on with talking about myself? Well, my favorite class is science, and I'm extremely bad at math. Blue is my favorite color, and I prefer dogs over cats.
The door slams in the background, causing all of us to jump.
That was my mom. Her and my dad have been arguing a lot for reasons I can't bother to figure out. I know for one thing that my dad is thinking of calling a divorce, which doesn't really bother me. It'd bother anyone else though, but it doesn't bother me. That's not weird, right? I've been hearing a lot lately that I'm a little weird. I don't see why though. I eat, drink, sleep, and live like a normal human being. That's what I think anyways. Maybe it's just because I'm not as talkative as everyone else. Or what if everyone is just making it up so that they would have a reason to pick on me? Frankly, I can't see why anyone would pick on me in the first place.
What a loser,
said Dennis.
I can see why people want to pick on him.
I shrugged.
Let's just play the next one.
It's January 14th, which is 3 days since I've last made a tape. I've decided I'm going to continue making tapes and keeping it as my journal. Who knows? Maybe I'll look back on these old recordings one day when I'm a bit older for a small dose of nostalgia. I'm making this one short because I have to leave in about 5 minutes. My mom has taken me to some stupid jewelry party over at our neighbor's house because, according to her, I absolutely have to be there, or will make a bad impression. So here I am, sitting in dress pants, a white button-up shirt, and a stupid tie. I don't have dress shoes, so I just wore an old pair of Nike sneakers, which makes the situation about 500 times worse. Maybe the next tape I'll talk about how the party went. Hopefully it went well enough to make me talk about it, that is.
We looked at each other and laughed.
Nike sneakers.
Rich muttered in almost a giggly tone.
I don't know. Should I seriously play the next one? I'm not sure if I can handle listening to this for another 10 tapes.
Dennis and Rich nodded with giant grins on their faces.
January 16th. I was punched in the face at school today by some senior whose name is Jake. Honestly, I don't even know the guy. To make my day even more wonderful, I ended up eating outside in the rain, because all the seats in the cafeteria were taken up by the time I got back from the nurse's office. I could have simply cleaned up the blood pouring out of my nose by myself in the bathroom, but one of the teachers, Miss Hoffington, insisted I go to see the nurse. While I was at the nurse, I managed to get a glimpse of myself when I was passing a tall mirror that hung outside of the bathroom door. I was a bit amazed at the amount of blood that was smudged across my face. Actually, it was kind of cool. I felt a small amount of pride when I got a good look at my face. Probably because I never actually spilt that much blood before in my life. Jake got suspended, by the way, for a week to be exact. I think he should be expelled so that I didn't have to see him again. Oh yeah, and by the way, the jewelry party went well. No one noticed my Nike sneakers, and the food was good.
A small amount of shock appeared on our faces.
Damn, he got punched in the face.
I said.
Well, serves him right. Someone must have known he was making stupid-ass tapes in his bedroom,
said Dennis.
How can you even be happy about getting a bloody nose?
Rich added.
What the hell is wrong with him?
I shook my head.
I don't know, man.
January 20th. While fooling around on YouTube for about 2 hours, I came across a weird documentary called The Slender Man. It's an odd creature with no face, wearing what looks to be a suit and has tentacles, giving off a dark, spidery look. It's said to lurk in the forest, and once you see it, it stalks you before it actually claims you as its victim. No one really knows what the Slender Man actually does to his or its victims, and all that we really know is that they go missing without a trace. I guess a lot of people are creeped out about this, and I can see why. The photos that depict him look pretty disturbing, but what actually generates the most fear are the stories about him. Actually, I've been listening to them all night, and I'm not scared at all, just intrigued. Turns out, these stories come from a site where people just write and submit a whole bunch of creepy stories, and not all of them are about Slender Man. I've heard a couple talk about lost episodes of famous TV shows that depict some disturbing, twisted version of the actual show. I've also heard stories about serial killers, ghosts, and whatever else is remotely scary. Some are more gruesome, while others are just a bit eerie. I, for one, never found any of these stories to be scary. I usually find myself thoroughly mystified as I read.
We all glanced at one another, a bit confused about what the Slender Man is. I guess the kid was a horror fan. I put the next tape in and held my head in my hands, waiting to go to sleep.
January 26th. Did I ever mention the site where I found all these stories from? It's called Creepypasta.com. Yes, I realize it's an odd name because an Italian dish is in no way creepy, but if you are interested, check it out. You know, now that I think about it, these stories have shown me how much darkness can exist in the world. You never actually are aware of it until you start to think about it. What I am saying is not crazy. It's true. Darkness lurks hidden in corners of everyday life. Right now, as I am saying this, a person is getting brutally murdered.
Immediately after he said that sentence, my head shot up and I looked at Dennis and Rich, bewildered at what I had just heard. They shook their heads and shrugged.
Somewhere out there, a person is dying. Could be a full-grown man or a child. You never realized it until you heard me say it just now. But hey, that's the real world for you. Lately, I've been noticing how everyone else at my school is so blissfully ignorant to the horrible things in this world, while I'm being constantly reminded of it. No one sees what I see. It kind of makes them all look a little bit dumb. Don't they see? Don't they notice what happens around them? They hear sirens echo down the road, and it could be just a plain car crash. But what if it was caused by something far from our reach? They don't know that. Their eyes aren't open wide enough to notice. At least I'm aware of it. February 2nd. Have you ever noticed how much death is involved in an average creepypasta? It's almost as if death is a needed element in the story. You know, ever since I started reading these stories, I've become pretty comfortable with the thought of dying. Sometimes I laugh at those poor people in those stories. I guess they haven't realized how much of a friend death could be, even when pain is a price you have to pay for meeting him. After all, aren't we all going to face it one day? Sooner for some people, later for the rest.
There was a long pause before he spoke again.
I've been thinking about writing my own creepypasta soon. After reading everyone else's, I figured I should try it for myself. It's worth a shot, isn't it? I think I'm going to write one about Slender Man, or maybe Jeff. Or maybe I'll write a story about a man who goes crazy and starts killing everyone he knows. That sounds like a wonderful idea. They didn't accept my story. What was wrong with it? Was my grammar off? Was my spelling bad? All I wanted was for it to be out there for everyone to see. Hell, it was probably one of the greatest ideas they ever came across, but...
His voice became angrier and a bit frustrated, almost as if he was about to go off on a full-blown rant.
but they turned it down. Are they too stupid to see the brilliance in what I wrote? On top of that, I found 2 assholes who decided to read it and make a mockery of my hard work. Idiots! Fucking idiots! They're just a bunch of idiots who can't see the genius in one's work.
A loud scream erupted from the speaker of the Walkman, and a hard thud was soon heard after. I figured he'd just thrown it at the wall out of anger. I wonder what the story sounded like, and why they turned it down. The next tape started, and immediately I realized how angry he was. He spoke in a loud, irritable tone, which was almost terrifying.
February 22nd. Stupid people. Stupid people. They should all rot in hell for all I care. I shouldn't have to deal with them every day. Once I walk through the school's front door, I'm surrounded by them. My teachers gave me detention for not paying attention in class. Why should I? They're all gonna die. They're all gonna die someday, and there's nothing we can do about it. But no one around me is smart enough to see that. Why? Why can't they just open their eyes and pay attention to the horrible world around us? They're too preoccupied with their lives and what comes tomorrow instead of what comes at the very end. Did I tell you I was pushed down the stairs today? Ben Trenner. He did it, and this time, I'm not letting it go. I'm going to find him, and he's going to pay. You might be wondering how I am going to get out of this house without my parents seeing me. They're already gone. Dad's still at work, and Mom...
There was a short pause, and a slight chuckle arose from his voice.
Mom's been taken care of. He'll find her when he gets home. And I'm not coming back. I don't have to deal with them anymore.
What? What did he mean by Mom's taken care of?
Asked Dennis.
Do you think?
No.
Rich cut me off.
There's no way in hell that little fucker did that. Play the next one.
I obliged and put the next tape in, a little scared of what I may hear.
February 24th. I found an old warehouse on the outskirts of the town, and I've decided that's where I'll be living from now on. The lights still work in the rooms, and they were not broken, and the boarded-up windows keep out most of the rain. It's not that bad of a place, really. I stole all the money from my mom's wallet, so food is taken care of. In one of the rooms of the warehouse, I found a really old TV. It's a black and white one, and it uses the dial to change the stations. The reception's a little bad, but I could still make out what's happening behind all the static and white noise. I decided to change to the news channel and was greeted with a picture of my mom.
A loud, almost evil laugh echoed from the speakers, which goes on for a few minutes.
They think I'm dead, which is good on my end, because they won't bother searching for me. Oh, the glory I felt when they announced how she had been stabbed 5 times in the chest. It made me feel a little bit excited to know that I have done such a thing. It wasn't easy, but it sure was satisfying in the end. And now I have to find Ben. He doesn't know it yet, but tonight's his last night on Earth. Luckily for me, his house is a few blocks from here. It's 11 at night right now, and I should be finished by 1. Wish me luck.
I quickly put the next tape in, now a bit more concerned with what was going on. Was he really going to kill that kid? It almost seemed too real to be just a sick joke, but no matter how much I wanted to think it was just a joke, a frightening truth stood in the back of my mind, telling me that it was all true.
February 25th. I've never felt so happy before in my life. You can't even imagine the butterflies I got when I saw him gurgling in his own blood in a worthless attempt to fight for his life, and no one heard a thing. I was able to open one of the first floor windows without a hitch, thank God. It took me about 30 minutes to walk up the stairs without making a noise. I had to be careful, for even the slightest of noises can wake someone. When I made it to his room, I was able to open the door without him waking up, and everything else that followed seemed to happen so quick, almost as if my memories of the event were a flipbook. I quickly covered his mouth before I dragged the knife across his throat, severing his jugular. I wanted to laugh at his squirming body as he died, but I didn't, out of fear of waking his parents. I pulled open the bedroom window, jumped out, and ran. Though I think I hurt something in my foot when I landed, but I didn't care. All I could feel was the cold, bitter wind slicing across my smiling cheeks as I ran. I'm back at the warehouse now. It's 1:45 in the morning. I have the TV switched on to the news, waiting to hear about my newest accomplishment.
We all looked at each other, still a bit traumatized from what we had just heard. An uneasy atmosphere hung in the room. He killed him. And no matter how much we didn't want to believe it, we knew it was true. I hesitantly put the next tape in and pressed play. Immediately, a loud, abrupt white noise blasted from the speakers, making us all almost fall out of our seats. Even though that would be something we'd end up laughing about, no one broke a smirk. I grabbed the next tape and put it in, turning down the volume before I pressed play, fearing there would be more static. I heard a faint voice, which signaled me to turn the volume back up. This time, the kid's voice sounded a bit huskier, pointing out that it had been a year or two since his last tape.
January 17th. It's been a while since I made one of these. Well, a few weeks ago, I was kicked out of the warehouse. I had to move my location, since the police were planning to investigate the area on account of the recent murders.
He started to laugh again. The sound of it was almost sickening, and added a sense of dread to the atmosphere. 7 people have died since I have made my last tape, and each murder has become more gruesome and disturbing than the last. The last person's eyes were gouged out, and the wrists were broken. There was no rhyme or reason for why I did it. I did it simply because I had to. It's just not enough. I need to kill. It's the thing I find the most pleasure in. It's even more fun to hear it announced in public. Anyway, the police are investigating the area to find the body of another one of my victims. They suspected it was the same killer as the last dozen, and they weren't wrong. So, I've moved my location. I walked for quite a long time through the woods that bordered the southern part of my town, before I managed to enter the next town and take refuge there. It's almost like those stories I took so much interest in. No, it's exactly like those stories. What a dream to actually be a part of my own creepypasta. Oh, if only the rest of the world could hear about it. The next tape was the strangest and most horrifying that night. When I pressed play, all we could hear was static, but after a while we heard what sounded like screaming. There was a certain quality to it. It sounded panicked and strained, as if the poor person's throat had given out from screaming too long.
January 22nd. You hear him. I know you do. That's one of my newest ideas. It makes me smile, seeing him beg and scream for help, knowing at this point nothing could save him. Why don't you give up hope, my dear friend? You see, death is inevitable for you, and there's no escaping it now. But hey, you shouldn't have been walking around town so late. You know that there are terrorists hiding in the corner every night, and that you should avoid them. But then you came across me.
He started to laugh again. The sound of it made me want to throw the Walkman at the wall, hoping to stop the evil laughter. But I knew I had to keep listening.
The best part is, he's not even restrained. I broke his legs, making it impossible for him to walk. He should be proud to be the first one of my victims to die like this. I've realized that every time I kill someone, I do it too quick, to the point where it's not as
satisfying as I hoped it would be. But by bringing him here, I'm able to see him struggle for his life before it actually ends.
Small bursts of static were heard, but even through all of that, we could hear what was going on. We heard heavy and slow footsteps that faded away as the distance between the Walkman and Chris grew. The screaming became louder and more struggle. The sound of it alone made me want to puke. The screaming was then replaced by a horrible gurgling noise. Even through his blood-filled throat, you could still hear him scream, begging for his life. I heard the familiar click and felt a bit relieved. That quickly went away as I realized that there was one more tape left.
February 5th. I've come up with the most wonderful idea yet, and it's probably the best one. I figured instead of just a slow and hesitant death, I'm going to let them rot and decay in their own spheres. Should I tell you what it is? No, it's a surprise, and I would hate to spoil it.
The last tape clicked and we all looked at each other, grim looks upon our faces. We knew what we had witnessed in the past 10 minutes, but none of us wanted to acknowledge it or believe it was real. After sitting in silence for what seemed about 20 minutes, I finally spoke up.
What do you think the surprise is?
Rich abruptly sat up and pushed his chair in.
I don't know, man, and I don't want to know.
His voice had an uneasy feel to it. It almost sounded as if he was a bit frustrated.
I'm leaving. I don't want to take part in any more of this.
I stopped him.
Wait, you can't go. What are we gonna do with these tapes?
Fucking burn them. Get rid of them. Pretend it didn't happen. I'm leaving.
Rich said.
Dude, calm down. We need to figure this out, okay? He could still be out there. We need to know who he is.
As I said this, Dennis cut in.
What we should do is hand him over to the police. Maybe they can do something.
Really? And you know what else the police will do if we give these to him? Fucking nothing. We've got to figure this out on our own.
Oh yeah?
Started Dennis.
You want to solve this big mystery? I know you want to know who he is, but you shouldn't be trying to mess around with something that could kill you.
I mean, sure, he could kill me, but he could kill a shitload of other people. We have to figure out where this fucker is.
You're not some kind of hero, Jake. I wouldn't bother messing with it.
Said Rich.
I'm not trying to be a hero. What do you guys think I'm going to do? Walk outside with a flashlight and call his name like a lost fucking dog? All I want to do is some research. That's all.
We stood in an uneasy silence for a moment.
Why were those tapes hanging on the fence in the first place?
Dennis asked. He was right. Why were they hanging on the fence?
Do you think someone had already found them and they were trying to get rid of them?
Look, guys,
said Rich.
It's like 3 in the morning. We're all a bit tired, we're all a bit confused, so trying to figure this out now would be useless.
Dennis and I looked at each other and nodded a bit sheepishly, realizing how true that statement was. Rich started to walk towards the door, and Dennis followed him soon after.
I'll catch up with you later, Jake.
Said Rich as he opened the door, making his way out. Dennis waved a goodbye at me and shut the door behind him. The sound of the door clicking shut gave me a sense of finality, and the silence that followed afterwards was almost sickening. I walked into the living room and turned on the TV, hoping to uplift the heavy atmosphere the tapes had caused. I then grabbed my laptop and sat on the couch, turning it on. While it was starting up, I looked into my dining room staring at the cassette tapes and Walkman that sat on the table until I heard the Windows 7 startup sound call for my attention. I immediately opened up Google and searched for murders and deaths in the area. However, nothing came close to what Chris had described. I tried looking for the school he went to, hoping I would get some clues, but that didn't work either. I sat for a second, staring at the Google search bar, until I had an idea. I clicked on the URL box and typed www.creepypasta.com. A site with a black background and white text came up, with the simple heading, Creepypasta.com. I scrolled through the page and read some of the stories and announcements. This is what he obsessed over. I muttered to myself. Sure, some of these stories were kinda scary, but it certainly wasn't anything that could drive someone to kill. How long has this site even been up? Doesn't seem that old. This was probably around since my senior year. I shut down the laptop and turned off the TV. After I got up, I walked into the dining room and shoved all the tapes back into the bag. I decided I would hand the tapes over to the authorities the next morning. I barely went to sleep that night, because I was still shooken up over what I had witnessed earlier. And as I laid in bed, it almost seemed as if there was a presence, like someone besides myself was there. I quickly shrugged it off as my paranoid mind causing me to feel things that weren't even there. Then I fell asleep soon after. When I woke up, it was around 12 in the afternoon. I had slept late, which isn't too surprising considering I had went to bed around 5. I didn't even bother to eat or brush my teeth after I got up. I just got dressed, grabbed the tapes, and got in the car. The tapes and Walkman were sitting in the passenger seat. They seemed to emit some kind of uneasy feeling throughout the ride, which only made me more eager to get rid of them. When I arrived at the police station, I quickly grabbed the tapes and entered the building. I didn't even bother to turn my car off. The lobby was vacant. The only person who was there was a cop sitting behind a desk, sipping coffee and filling out paperwork. I dropped the bag onto the counter, causing the man to look up from his work.
"Can I help you?"
he said in a somewhat irritable tone. "I think I solved a few disappearances." He raised an eyebrow at me and glanced towards the filled grocery bag that sat on his desk.
"Those?"
he asked. I nodded quickly. He sighed and grabbed the bag and put it on the floor next to him.
"All right, I'll present it to the authorities when I can."
"Aren't you the authorities?" I asked, a bit frustrated at how little he was concerned.
"Listen, I only hand out speed tickets and search for lost parents at the mall. But right now, I'm doing this here paperwork, and when I get the chance, I'll hand them over to the authorities."
I nodded with some disappointment and left, relieved that I didn't have to be close to those tapes anymore. Once I got home, I grabbed my mail and opened the front door. As I made my way into the living room, I tossed the stack of bills onto the table. I was surprised to hear something hard hit the wooden surface. When I looked back, I noticed that the manila folder that laid among the white envelopes wasn't filled with sheets of paper, but a small object. Now a bit curious, I went back and opened it, and I cringed when I saw what the folder had revealed. Inside the folder was a small, black cassette tape labeled Entry 15. No, this wasn't possible. It had to be Richard Dennis. There is no way another tape could have been sent to me. We were the only ones who listened to him that night, and I was certain no one saw us, except for a few cars that passed us when we were walking down the street. I wanted to hear what the tape said, but I remembered that I gave the Walkman to the police. I searched my basement for a radio, anything that could play this tape. I had to know what it said. Finally, after some searching for what seemed like an hour, I came across the box in the basement that had a small cassette player inside. Hastily, I grabbed the dusty object from the box and ran back upstairs. As soon as I reached the table, I put the tape inside the player and pressed play, hoping to hear that the tape and all the others were just a sick joke one of my friends had planned out. But once I heard the voice, my stomach dropped. I felt like I was going to puke.
April 12th. Hello, Jake. What did you think of my game? It took me a while to get it ready, but it was all worth it. I knew your curious mind wouldn't be able to help itself. I'm surprised how smoothly this all went out, actually. You and your friends barely noticed me when I put the bag on the fence, and you went and grabbed it, almost as if on cue. Are you still surprised, Jake? I've been keeping a close watch on you ever since I killed Ben, but I never actually carried out anything till now. I knew I had to save the best for last, just for you. And now that I think about it, all the waiting was worth it. I'm shocked, Jake. You seem like you don't even recognize me at all. Don't you remember punching me in the face back in high school?
I started to hear the sound of leaves shuffling. It sounded as if they were walking through the woods.
You guys looked pretty scared over there when you heard the last tape. I could see you right through the window.
Once the tape had stopped, I slowly and unwillingly looked towards the window on the south side of the dining room. There was nothing there except for bushes that stood directly in front of the glass. Terrified, I ran towards the phone and called the cops. When I heard the voice on the phone, I jumped into a panic. Hello? I desperately asked the phone. As I spoke, I patrolled the house, making sure all the windows and doors were locked.
"Oh, it's you again,"
said the policeman I'd met earlier.
"Listen, I told you I would get to it when I can."
"Someone's after me. I just received another tape in the mail, and there were threats directed towards me on it. I think it's the same person that made the tapes I gave you. He's going to kill me." The officer spoke in a rather bored tone.
"Well, make sure everything's locked up first."
He paused.
"Now, are you sure it's not just one of your friends trying to mess with you?"
"I am absolutely sure that it's none of my friends. Please, send someone out here," I pleaded.
"Sorry, but all you can do now is to make sure that no one can get in. Just go to your room and quietly read a book or something."
I slammed the phone back onto the hook. He's not listening to me. I grabbed my laptop and headed towards my room. I didn't notice before, but I was the Jake Chris had mentioned in one of the tapes. And now he's back to get me, just like how he killed Ben. I shut my door behind me and locked it, hoping it would serve as an extra layer of defense. I then decided I would document what had happened to me and submit it to Creepypasta, so it would serve as a warning to anyone out there. And that's how I got here, typing desperately on my laptop. I just heard the shattering of glass downstairs, and I'm becoming more terrified by the second. I'm going to try to finish this as best as I can. Please, for everyone's sake, if you happen to have a thing for these stories, don't get too obsessed. Or you may turn into the very thing you originally feared. If not, then watch out for those who are vulnerable to becoming the monster that Chris is. Chris, honestly, I hope you're happy. You have your own creepypasta, and you live in what you admire so much. The darkness in a simple, scary story is more real than I thought.